In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to use the bone tool in Adobe Animate for your characters that you designed in Term 1. So if you haven't finished those characters from Term 1, you need to do that before you can use the bone tool. And you may be making some modifications to your character to make this work with the bone tool. It depends on how you made your character the first time. Now, in saying that, I thought about my character a little bit. This was the original character over here, and I made some minor modifications to my separated character. So these minor modifications, I added a hip in there, just so that I could have the legs separated from the torso a little bit when I use the bone tool, and I'll show you what I mean later on. And I've added just like a little feature on top of the legs so that it's has no lines, and it looks like it just kind of bleeds into the hip. So these are just little minor modifications. They're very quick to do, and I just did that so then I can use the bone tool a little bit better, and I'll show you what I mean a little bit later. Now, before you get into animate, I'd recommend separating your character like this. So just copy and pasting your character, separating, noticing all the different parts, figuring out what will be stuck together. So like his head will be stuck together, his arms, say, looking at your arms, seeing that you have a bicep, a forearm, a wrist. Maybe you want to do that 3-point animation there. I'm only doing 2 points. I've got the arm and the hand. He won't be moving in the elbows. Same with his legs, he won't be moving in his knees. He's going to have a leg and a foot. But I've put a hip in there so they can be separated from the torso. That depends on your character. And what I mean by that, if you look at this character over here, he's got, say, a hip bone here, and then he's got his legs. And then he's got 2 points in his torso, which leads to his 3 points in his arms, 3 points in his arms, 3 points in his legs, 3 points in his legs. And I hope that makes a little bit more sense in terms of what I'm talking about. And I'll show you what I mean in Animate in a second. But firstly, we need to go into Animate. We need to create a new one. And HD, 24 frames per second, and ActionScript 3.0. And we're going to create that. Just going to zoom out so I can see my layer. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to import to library. We haven't done this before. So we're going to go File, Import to library. And now the great thing about Animate is that you can just insert your Illustrator files without having to export the Illustrator file as a PNG or a JPEG or anything like that. You can import it as the Illustrator file, and it'll be broken down in its pieces in Animate. So it saves so much time. So you can just literally import this Illustrator file, this AI file. Now it's going to pop up with this menu about all these different paths and layers and things. That's just talking about the layers in your Illustrator file. And all you need to do is press import. Don't worry about the text because you guys won't have text. Alright. Now, notice that nothing happened on your screen. That's because it went to your library, which is over here on the right in the bookshelf kind of thing, or books. It's called library, but yours must be up here, mine's down the bottom. If you click on that, you'll see your AI file, which will show your designs. Now, all you need to do to import that into your stage is click and drag and put that into your stage. Okay, so now we have our character, we have a keyframe saying that there's something on this scene. Now, it's all as one object at the moment. If I click any object, it's going to highlight all objects and move them all together. To remove that is to go right click, break apart, or Control B. Now you notice that they're all separate layers in their groupings. So whatever I grouped them into Illustrator, they're grouped into here. So I'm going to get rid of all the text. I'm going to get rid of my hammer at the moment, and I'm going to get rid of my final design. Now you can keep this final design just over here if you want to have a reference point of how your character is built, but seemingly that you've probably been playing with this character for a while, you might actually know what he looks like at the end anyway, so we can just remove him or her. Alright, so we have our character. Now what we need to do is actually break it down again into symbols before we can use the bone tool. So what you're going to do, you're going to click on the object, you're going to right click it, and you're going to do a thing called convert to symbol. Now you're going to make sure it's a graphic, and you're going to rename it to whatever the part is, in this instance, a head, and then press OK. Now you will notice in your library that it's made a separate layer or a separate object called the head, and it's a symbol. Once you've made the symbol, I want you to right click it and distribute it to a layer. And now you have a head layer, which is just your head. And I'm just going to hide it so I know that I've done it. And I want you to do that for all your different parts. So you got your, say, I'm going to do it in his perspective. So left arm, left hand, right arm, right hand, torso, hip, left leg, left foot, right leg, right foot. And we're just going to go through that now. So once you are finished, you should have all your layers in their own little file over here with their own keyframes. And you should have a blank layer. So we can just actually get rid of that blank layer, and then you should only have your character's body parts. Now we're going to re-show them all. You just click that button to re-show them all. And I'm actually going to build my character now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put him all back into his positions. Now we'll notice that there's some problems in terms of layering, and that's just because when we convert it to a symbol, it's either moved into a different order in here. So we're just going to fix that order up. We're going to go, okay, well, that needs to go here, that needs to go here. Alright, so once you've relayered your character into its correct positions, so you know where he looks like he's walking or standing still in one direction, I just might fix that a little bit. It's got a little bit of sway, but that's okay. That would be my character designing. So this is a great point to see where you go, you really evaluate how your character designs are. So like I would actually fix these legs in Illustrator if I wanted to make this work a lot better. In terms of I wouldn't have copy and pasted these directly, I would have changed up the lines slightly just to make it look like it works, because if I look back in my Illustrator, they're both facing the same way, so I probably have that bend out that way and that bend out that way, or vice versa, or whatever it is, to make it look like it fits a little bit naturally, but I'm happy with it. It'll work. Alright, so once you've created all the symbols and you've layered them all back into the positions, it's actually time to use the bone tool. So what you need to do now is find the bone tool. Now, actually, before we do that, we need to actually make a pivot point. Because if we look at our character in here, he's got 2 dots in the torso and 2 dots in the hip. Now, that's actually not possible with the bone tool. It only allows you to do one pivot point, or one point in a certain point. So what we're going to do, we're just going to make a layer, and we're going to call it a pivot. And we're just going to grab our shape tool, and we're going to make just a little black circle. I'm just going to actually remove the stroke. And we're just going to make just a little black dot. And I'm just going to move that, if I grab the right tool, I'm going to move that into the hip, about there in the hip. And I'm also going to copy and paste that. I'm just going to I'm going to bring the pivot to the top, so I can see them. And then I'm going to put the other pivot up the top here. Okay, so what that will do, it will create that pivot point here before the shoulders, like keep a straight line, because that's how we move. This is how we move, and I'm creating a character that moves like that. Now, it all depends on what character you're doing. If you're doing a very different character, a very weird moving character, or like an alien or something completely different that doesn't follow human anatomy, you're going to have to think about how they move. So what I recommend is actually watching videos of that animal moving and going, okay, so if they have a tail, wow, they've got a lot of motion in that tail, so they need to have a lot of pivot points. Or how do their legs move? Say with a cat, how does the cat's legs move compared to a human's legs? So you're going to have to do a little bit of research. How would this monkey move? Right? That tail will move differently to anything that we have. Okay. So now that I have my pivot points in place, which is perfect, now I'm actually ready to use the bone tool. So firstly, I'm going to start by clicking on the bone tool. Now, if you're in Adobe Animate 2020, it might be in this edit toolbar area, and it might be just here. You just need to click and drag that into your tool section. If you're in an earlier Animate, I'm pretty sure they show you the bone tool at all times. But otherwise, 3 dots and drag it in. Okay, so we're going to go to our first pivot point, and we're going to click on it. Notice how the tool is black. That means it's working. So we're going to click and drag it There's one step that I forgot to do, and that's actually make our pivot points into symbols. At the moment, they're shapes. So what we're going to do, we're going to remove one of these pivot points, and we're going to convert it to symbol, and we're going to call it a pivot as a graphic still, and we're going to duplicate that. Right click, or we can just copy and paste. Now it's fine that they're in the same layer. You can actually do all these things in the same layer. I just find it easier when I separate them and then bring them all back together, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. Alright, so there's symbols. They're ready to use the bone tool now. So grab the bone tool. You can click on your pivot, and then just click just slightly up to your torso. Alright, from there you're going to go and click and drag up to the next pivot. So now you've got that middle bit. Then you're going to click and drag to the arm. Click and drag down to the hand. I'm going to keep the hand maybe there. Click and drag to the other arm. Click and drag to the hand. For some reason it's in an awkward spot, so I might actually move the hand in front if I can, just so I can grab it properly. So click and drag to the hand. There we go, that's better. To here. I'm just going to click and drag it. Oop, I'm not using the bone tool at the moment. Click and drag it down to the hip. Oh, that's the leg. There we go, to the hip. Then go to the leg. Go to the leg. That's better. And then to the foot. To the foot. Up to the head. Cool. So you notice that all your layers are grayed out now. So if you have done it wrong, you'll notice, like I just noticed, that the keyframe is still there. So you go, okay, well I didn't connect that, so I need to reconnect that. So being careful, take your time with it. And it should make this armature layer. And I'm just going to rename it Dwarf, which you can use to animate. Now, you'll notice that my character doesn't look like its character anymore. That's because all the layers are stuffed up, and we're just going to go through with it and fix all these layers. So I'm just going to press Control down just to move it back into position, back to where they belong. So that's Control down. Okay. Alright, so we're nearly at that point where we're happy with it. I need to change that pivot again because the pivot's still showing. So I'm going to double click on that and change that fill to be empty. So I can't see it anymore. Okay. Now there's two more things that we need to do, and they're related. So if we go to our pivot point and click on it, should highlight green, you should see blue, it doesn't matter what direction it is. You're going to get rid of enable. Now I need to find it on 2020. Okay. So to fix that, you need to go to click on your tool and remove this button here. It should be highlighted or say joint rotation. There used to be a button in Adobe 2020 that says enable. 2018 says enable, but in 2020 you've got to click that slider. Sorry about that. So once you have done that, your character is actually ready to animate. he's got the motion, or she. You can add more constraints to your character, because notice that the leg can go in a big rotation, and that's not natural at all. So what you can do is click on, say, like these joints, click on one line, do a joint constraint, and notice these two little triangles, or cone kind of shapes, that will restrict that motion. So if I click and drag that now, he's stuck in that motion, or the hips are stuck in that motion, I mean. To stop the leg, I need to click on this one here, and a constraint, and then now that leg can only go to that dial, which is probably what you want. Okay, same again over here. I'm just going to constrain a bunch of my objects. Alright, so I roughly constrained my objects. Now, because of these points, I'm not happy with them. Pretty sure you can move where your bone is. Yeah, there you go. So if you put your bone in the wrong spot, you can use the free transform tool. So this tool here, and you could change the anchor points or where they are sitting. So like I just moved that one to the shoulder because it was in the middle of the arm, and the same thing here. I'm going to move that to the shoulder, which is about here. Same with the head. I'm going to move it to here. Legs, I'm going to probably move them up a little bit. And this is how you get precise with your animation. You can get the right pivot points going on. You get the right motions happening. Otherwise, it's just all over the shop. Alright, so take your time. Actually see how your body moves if you're doing a human. See how the character, how you move your ankles, how you move your arms, how you move everything, because that can actually help how your animation goes. Now he's going to chop his foot off, so you can think about that when you're doing your motion. Alright, so once you have finished putting a bone tool all together for your character, so he has all of it, or she has his bones, and a bit of constraints just to stop it moving so much, you're ready for animation. So what I want you to do, I want you to create like about 5-second animation. So right click, insert frame, and I want you to make an animation of your character walking across the screen. Okay, so what you're going to do, you can highlight it or use the transform tool, and you can move it wherever. And I want you to just say move it to the frame. This is a path-based animation, so you can move it to a certain key frame, drag it in, and then give it the motion. So say move this leg. If I stop using the transform tool, use the select tool to move it as with the bone tool, you can give it the animation that it needs. So you could see it's very simple so far, and then you can move it into space using the onion skin to see what happened previously, and then moving the things to make it look like it's walking. Now, why didn't the hand join him? It should have. Now my other arm's not working properly, so we'll just leave that. But you can get the motion of walking happening. Maybe every 5 frames, move them across. And it seems like my pivot points are broken. But yeah, so what I want you to do is to make an animation that goes for 5 seconds, that goes across the screen, makes him look like he's walking, all the way across for 5 seconds, maybe even pause in the middle to give us a wave, and then go to the end, and then export that as a SWF file and post that into Google Classroom. Now also don't forget to save, so you have reference for this bone tool exercise later. So bone tool exercise.